I never imagined my son would one day look me in the eyes and tell me he hated me. But the truth is, when those words finally came, I felt like I had been waiting for them. Almost as if all the years of distance, all the silences, and all the mistakes I had tried to bury had been slowly building toward that one moment. It happened on a quiet evening, the kind of evening where the sky feels heavy even though there's no rain. The street outside my apartment was empty. The air was still, and the world around me seemed strangely calm, as if it knew that something inside me was about to break. My son stood there in front of me, taller than I remembered, his shoulders tense and his jaw clenched. He was 19 then, a young man, but still carrying the voice of the boy I had once tucked into bed. His eyes were cold, distant, and full of something I wasn't prepared for. He said it softly. No shouting, no anger, just a simple, steady voice that cut deeper than any yell could. Dad, I don't think I'll ever forgive you. You left, and because of that, I hate you. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. Words felt useless in that moment, like empty shells rolling across the floor. All I could do was stand there, my hands at my sides, and feel the weight of every year I had missed. Every birthday, every scraped knee, every late night thought he must have had about why his father wasn't there. And the cruel thing was, I could not blame him. The light in the hallway flickered above us, buzzing faintly like it always did. The shadows on the walls stretched behind him, and for a second, he looked almost like he was fading away right in front of me. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to touch his shoulder, pull him close, explain everything I never explained before. But I didn't move. I just watched him turn around and walk toward the elevator, his footsteps echoing down the long, narrow hall. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and for a moment, he paused. Maybe he was waiting for me to call after him. Maybe he wanted me to say something, anything. But my voice stayed trapped inside my chest, along with the apology I had rehearsed so many times. The doors closed, and he was gone. And I stood there, staring at my own reflection in the glossy metal surface, realizing that the son who had once held my hand now couldn't even look at me without feeling the sting of betrayal. That night was not the first time I had lost him, but it was the first time he told me he knew it. I went back inside my apartment. The place was small, one bedroom, one living area, a kitchen that still smelled faintly of the coffee I had made that morning. The lights were dim, and there was a soft hum from the refrigerator, like a whisper that filled the room. I sat at the table, the same table where I had left a mug half full of cold coffee. I wrapped my hands around it, even though it was no longer warm. I just needed something to hold on to. A part of me wanted to break down. Another part of me told me I deserved this. And in a strange way, I accepted both. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence. Sometimes silence is loud, loud enough to make your chest feel smaller, tight, like you're breathing through a narrow straw. And that night, the silence around me felt like a punishment I had earned long ago. I opened my eyes and stared at the empty chair across from me, the chair I had hoped my son would sit in. I imagined him there. I imagined us talking, laughing, maybe even arguing, but in a way that had warmth inside it. But the chair stayed empty, and the room stayed cold. I leaned back in my seat and whispered to myself, "You did this. You're the reason he feels this way." It wasn't self-pity. It wasn't drama. It was simply the truth. You see, my story doesn't start with my son hating me. It starts with me making a choice that changed both our lives, a choice I thought was right at the time, a choice I thought would protect him, but one that tore our family apart instead. People often say time heals everything, but what they don't talk about is how time also reveals everything. The mistakes, the regrets, the things we tried to ignore. When my son said he hated me, it pulled every buried memory back to the surface. Memories I had tried to forget. Memories I had convinced myself didn't matter anymore. But they mattered. They mattered more than I ever admitted. That night, after he left, I knew I couldn't run from my past anymore. I had to face it. For him. For myself. For the pieces of my life that still felt scattered across the years. And that is why I'm telling this story. Not because I want pity. Not because I want forgiveness. But because somewhere out there, another father might be standing in a dim hallway, watching his child walk away, carrying words that cut deeper than any wound. And maybe, just maybe, hearing my story will help him choose differently. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed awake until the sky outside my window shifted from dark gray to pale blue. The first light of morning crept through the thin curtains, painting faint lines on the wall. I watched dust drift in the air, peaceful and slow, like tiny particles carrying memories I couldn't let go of. And for the first time in years, I let myself go back to the beginning. Back to the life I had before everything fell apart. Back to the days when my son was still small and the world felt simpler. Because you can't understand how I lost him until you understand how deeply I loved him. And you can't understand why he hated me until you hear what I did. So this is where the story truly begins. Not in the hallway where my son walked away, but long before that, on the day he was born. He came into the world on a rainy morning. I remember it clearly because I had been pacing the hospital hallway, listening to the soft hiss of rain against the windows, feeling my heart beat in my throat while nurses walked past me with calm faces that didn't match the storm inside me. When the doctor finally stepped out and said, "You can come in now," I felt my whole body go weak, like I was stepping into a future I wasn't sure I was ready for, yet somehow had always been waiting for. The room was dim, quiet, almost sacred. My wife lay there, exhausted but glowing with something I can only describe as peaceful strength. And in her arms was him, my son. He was so small that he barely filled the blanket wrapped around him. His face was pink and scrunched, his eyes closed tight, his tiny hands curled into fists like he was ready to take on the entire world. I stood there in silence, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid to move too quickly, afraid to ruin the moment. My wife looked up at me and smiled softly. "Do you want to hold him?" she whispered. I hesitated. I didn't want to admit that I was scared. Scared I wasn't enough. Scared I would drop him. Scared I wouldn't know how to be the man he needed me to be. But she reached out, placing him gently into my arms. And the moment I felt his warmth, everything inside me softened. His tiny head rested against my chest. His breathing was slow and steady. His heartbeat was like a quiet tapping that synced with mine. And in that moment, I made a silent promise. I will always be here for you. I will protect you, no matter what. I didn't know then that life would challenge that promise, or that I would fail in ways I never imagined. But that moment, that first moment, it still lives inside me like a soft, steady light in the middle of a dark night. The early years were simple, pure, peaceful in a way I didn't appreciate until it was gone. I used to wake up before the sun to get ready for work. I'd hear tiny footsteps in the hallway, and my son would appear in the doorway with messy hair and sleepy eyes, holding a stuffed bear by one leg. "Daddy, you going work?" he'd mumble. "Yeah, buddy," I'd say, tying my shoes. He'd walk over and climb onto my lap, placing his small hand on my cheek as if to hold me still for just a few more seconds. "Come back. I'll always come back, I'd promise." And at the time, I meant it. Back then, my world was simple. Wake up early, work hard, come home tired, kiss my wife, tuck my son into bed, and feel like the luckiest man alive. We didn't have much money. Our apartment was small. Our furniture was old. But our home was warm, filled with laughter, soft music, and quiet moments that felt like they would last forever. My son and I had a routine. Every night before bed, we'd sit on the couch with a blanket wrapped around us and watch the same old cartoons. He'd rest his head on my shoulder, and I'd listen to his little giggles as if they were the most important sound in the world. Those moments were the kind you don't realize you'll miss until you're sitting alone years later, remembering the way a small child's laughter could heal things inside you that you didn't even know were broken. But life has a way of changing, quietly at first, then all at once, without warning. The first shift happened slowly, too slowly for me to notice at the time. I got promoted at work. A bigger role, more responsibilities, better pay. I told myself it was for my family, for my wife, for my son, for our future. And in the beginning, it felt right. It felt good. It felt like I was becoming the provider I had always wanted to be. But with the promotion came long hours, late nights, weekends where I'd sneak into my home office to answer emails before anyone woke up. My wife would stand in the doorway sometimes and say, "Come to bed. It's late." I'd gesture to my laptop and say, "Just a little more. I promise." My son would ask, "Daddy, you play with me?" And I'd say, "In a bit, buddy." But in a bit turned into hours, then days, then weeks. I didn't see the distance forming. I didn't hear the silence growing. I didn't notice the small, important moments I was missing. His first soccer game, a school recital, a birthday party where he looked for me in the crowd and didn't find me. I told myself I was doing everything for him. But looking back, I was doing it instead of being with him. The worst part is, I thought I'd have time to fix it later. I thought little kids stayed little for longer. I thought family could wait because love didn't go away. But children grow. And love, when left unattended, begins to feel like abandonment. My wife saw it before I did. She tried to tell me, gently at first, then more directly. "You're slipping away," she whispered one night. "You're here, but you're not really here." I brushed it off. I told myself she didn't understand the pressure I was under. I told myself she'd thank me later. But some later never come. There is a moment, though, a moment I replay in my head more often than I'd like to admit. That should have been my wake-up call. It was a Tuesday evening. I came home late again, tired, hungry, frustrated. I dropped my keys on the counter and loosened my tie as I walked toward the living room. My son was sitting on the carpet with his crayons scattered around him, drawing something that looked like a stick figure family. He was maybe 6 or 7 then. He looked up at me with a smile that was more hopeful than happy. "Dad, I made something for you." I knelt down beside him, glancing at the picture. It was 3 figures holding hands, a man, a woman, and a child. Above it, in shaky letters, he had written, "My family." But the part that broke me wasn't the misspelling. It was that he had drawn the man smaller than the others. Faded, almost like he didn't belong. I forced a smile. "It's beautiful, buddy." He handed it to me. "You can put it in your office so you don't forget us." Forget us. Those 2 words hit me like a punch, but I still didn't let myself feel their full weight. I just ruffled his hair and said something like, "Of course I won't forget you." But the truth was, I had already started to. Not intentionally, not consciously, but through neglect, the quiet kind that grows slowly until the damage becomes too big to hide. If I had paid attention to that moment, maybe things would have turned out differently. Maybe the story I'm telling now wouldn't be filled with so much regret. But I didn't pay attention. I didn't hear the warning in his voice. I didn't see the early signs of a wound that would later become a scar between us. And life kept moving, pushing us further and further apart. I didn't know it then, but I was walking toward a choice that would eventually cause my son to hate me. A choice I thought was right. A choice I believed was necessary. A choice that ended with me leaving the home I once promised I would never walk away from. But before that happened, before everything shattered, there were still moments of warmth, moments of peace, moments I cling to now as reminders that we were once happy. And those memories are what make the pain of losing him so much heavier. There's one evening I return to often in my mind, an evening that, now, feels like a photograph left too long in the sun. The colors have faded, but the shapes, the shadows, the feelings, they're still there. We were all sitting in the living room. My wife was folding laundry on the couch. My son was lying on the floor with his chin in his hands, watching his favorite cartoon. And I was sitting in the recliner with my laptop open on my knees, pretending I was with them even though I wasn't. I remember the soft glow of the lamp beside us, the faint smell of detergent, the quiet hum of the TV, the warmth of being close to the people I loved, even as I drifted farther from them without noticing. My wife looked at me gently. "Can you put the laptop away for a bit?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry, just hopeful. "I just need to finish one more thing," I said without looking up. She didn't push. She never pushed. She carried the weight alone, silently, the way people do when they're afraid of breaking something fragile. After a minute, she turned back to the laundry. And for a brief moment, I felt something, a tug in my chest, a whisper telling me to close the laptop, to put it down, to be present. But I ignored it. Like I ignored so many small chances to repair what I was slowly tearing apart. My son crawled closer to me and rested his head against my leg. "Dad, can you watch with us?" I brushed his hair with my fingers and gave him a quick smile. "In a minute, buddy." But minutes have a way of piling up until they become absences. And absences have a way of turning into wounds. Back then, I didn't realize that children don't always cry when they're hurt. Sometimes they go quiet. Sometimes they retreat. Sometimes they stop asking for your attention because they've learned you won't give it. And that's exactly what happened. The requests became fewer. The little drawings stopped. The nighttime cuddles ended. The questions, the endless, curious, beautiful questions, faded into silence. One day, I came home and realized he hadn't run to the door in weeks. He used to sprint toward me, arms wide open, shouting "Daddy," with a joy that felt like sunlight. But one day it ended. Not with a dramatic moment. Not with tears or words. Just a quiet shift. I walked in, and he barely looked up from the TV. "Hey," he said, without emotion. It was such a small thing. A simple word. Barely more than a whisper. But it cut deeper than I let myself admit. I should have gone to him. I should have sat beside him, hugged him, asked him how he was. I should have taken that single moment as a wake-up call. Instead, I convinced myself that he was simply growing up. That boys get distant. That this was normal. But what he was really doing was adjusting to life without me, while I was still in the room. My wife saw it. She saw the distance forming like a thin crack in a glass window. At first invisible, then noticeable, then threatening to shatter the whole thing. One night, after our son went to bed, she sat beside me in the kitchen, the soft glow of the overhead light casting faint shadows on her face. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally tired, the kind of tired that grows from carrying unspoken worries for too long. "We're losing him," she whispered. Her voice trembled, just slightly. She wasn't accusing me. She wasn't blaming me. She was pleading with me, pleading with the man she married to come back. I leaned against the counter and sighed. "You're overthinking it." "No," she said softly. "I'm not." She looked down at her hands, hands that once held mine with hope, hands that now fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve like she was trying to stop herself from shaking. "He looks for you," she said. "He asks for you. He waits for you. And you're not here." "Not really." I told her I was working hard for us. For the bills. For the rent. For the future. But she lifted her eyes and looked directly into mine, not with anger, but with a quiet ache. "What future?" she asked. "One where you're never home? One where our son grows up without you? One where I sleep beside a man who's always somewhere else?" Her words should have shaken me. They should have broken through the numbness I didn't realize I was living in. But instead, I felt myself stiffen defensively. "I'm doing my best," I murmured. She nodded slowly. "I know. But sometimes, your best is breaking us." Then she stood, kissed my forehead gently, too gently, and walked out of the kitchen. The sound of her quiet footsteps echoed longer than they should have. If I had followed her that night, if I had held her, if I had looked her in the eyes and said, "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll change," my story might have been different. But I didn't. I went back to my laptop, back to the emails, back to the illusion that providing more made me a better father. I didn't realize I was building a future where my wife would eventually leave, and my son would grow up believing I had chosen work over him. There's a sound I will never forget. Not a scream, not a fight, not a slammed door, just a soft, quiet sigh from my wife. It was the sound of someone giving up silently. It happened one night when I came home past midnight. I walked into the dim living room and found her sitting alone on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She had been waiting for me. When I saw her there, her eyes red, her posture small, her expression lost, something inside me should have broken open. But I was so used to being tired, so used to numbing myself, that I only asked, "Why are you still awake?" She didn't answer right away. She just watched me for a long moment. Not with anger, not with resentment, with resignation. Finally she whispered, "I don't know how to reach you anymore." Those were the last words she said to me before everything changed. Before the note, before the bags, before the day she walked out, not out of anger, but out of heartbreak she could no longer carry. But I will get to that. Because that moment, the day she left, is the moment my son began to hate me. And it's the moment I began losing myself without even realizing it. But before that, before the storm that tore everything apart, there was still warmth, still love, still hope. Moments I remember now like distant echoes. Moments I wish I had held on to longer. Moments that remind me I once had a family that loved me completely. And those memories, those quiet, beautiful memories, are what make the loss so heavy. There was one more moment, a small, almost forgettable moment, that I didn't realize would become the last truly peaceful evening we ever had as a family. It was a Sunday, late afternoon, the kind of day where sunlight comes through the window in soft stripes, warm and golden, touching everything gently. My wife was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove while humming a song she loved from years before. My son sat at the table with a workbook open, swinging his legs back and forth as he tried to focus. I was home early for once. Not because I planned it, not because I chose to, but because a meeting had been canceled. And even then, I almost stayed at the office to catch up. But something pulled me home that day, something I didn't listen to often enough. When I walked in, My son looked up with a surprise so pure it almost made me stop in the doorway. "Dad, you're home early." His face lit up, not just with happiness, but with something rarer, relief. It hit me harder than I expected. I ruffled his hair and sat beside him. "What are you working on, buddy?" He smiled wide. "Homework. But it's kind of fun." I laughed softly. "Since when is homework fun?" He shrugged. "It's fun when someone sits with me." My wife turned around at the stove and glanced at us. Her smile was soft, warm, carrying a tenderness I hadn't seen in a while. "Maybe you can help him," she said quietly. And I did. For the next 20 minutes, I sat with my son, explaining simple math problems, drawing little shapes on the edges of his paper, making him laugh when I messed up on purpose. It felt natural. It felt peaceful. It felt like the man I used to be. At one point, he leaned his head against my arm. A small gesture, but one I hadn't felt in too long. And I remember thinking, this is what matters. This is what I'm working so hard for. But then, like always, the moment slipped. My phone buzzed. A message from work. Something urgent. Something that couldn't wait. My wife looked at me as my expression changed. Her smile faded. Her hands paused on the spoon. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I felt the shift too. I stood from the table. "I need to take this call," I said. My son's face dropped. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just a quiet, downward shift in his eyes. A small loss. A small disappointment. One of many. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind me. I told myself I'd only be a minute. But it wasn't a minute. It was an hour. By the time I came back, dinner was on the table. My wife's eyes were tired. My son was quieter, poking at his food with his fork. And the warmth from earlier had faded like breath on a cold window. I sat down and tried to pretend nothing had changed. But the silence at that table was different. Heavy. Unspoken. Full of things none of us knew how to say. Looking back now, that was the last evening we were together in a way that felt whole. I didn't know it then. I didn't know how quickly life can turn. How fast a family can go from connected to broken without a single fight, without a single explosion. Just slow neglect. Neglect disguised as ambition. As responsibility. As love. Neglect that I still carry with me like a quiet shadow. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I kept working. I kept promising I'd make time. I kept telling myself I was doing what any responsible father would do. But responsibility means nothing if it steals you away from the very people you think you're protecting. My wife grew more distant. Not cold, just quiet. Soft in her sadness. My son stopped asking me to play. Stopped showing me his drawings. Stopped standing by the door waiting for me to come home. He grew used to my absence. And that, more than anything, should have terrified me. There's something heartbreaking about watching your child learn to live without you while you're still alive. But I didn't see it clearly then. Or maybe I saw it and convinced myself it wasn't my fault. Either way, the distance grew. And then, one morning, everything changed. I woke up to an empty spot beside me in the bed. Not unusual. My wife liked to start her day early. But the house felt different. Still. Too still. I walked into the kitchen and found a note on the table. Folded neatly. Placed beside a mug of coffee that had already gone cold. I didn't need to open it to know. Somehow, my body already understood. When I unfolded the paper, my hands were shaking. The handwriting was hers. Soft. Familiar. But the words felt like the ground disappearing beneath me. It said, "I can't do this anymore. I love you, but you're not here. Our son needs a father who shows up. I need a partner who is present. We're leaving for now. Please don't come after us. Not until you decide what matters most." I read the note once. Then again, as if the words might change if I stared long enough. They didn't. My eyes moved around the kitchen slowly. The empty chair. The cereal bowl in the sink. The half-finished school project on the counter. Everything felt familiar. Everything felt wrong. I walked to my son's room. His clothes were gone. His toys were gone. The bed was neatly made. Only one thing was left behind. A small drawing taped to the wall. A family of 3, holding hands. Except this time, the father wasn't drawn faded or small. He wasn't there at all. My knees gave out. I don't know how long I sat on that floor. Minutes. Hours. Time didn't matter. All I knew was that the 2 people I loved most were gone. Not because they wanted to hurt me. Not because of a fight. But because I had slowly pushed them out without realizing it. And in that moment, with the house silent, the morning sun cold, the note trembling in my hand, I made a choice that would haunt me for years. I let them go. I told myself it was what she asked. I told myself they needed space. I told myself I needed to become better before I tried to bring them back. But choosing to stay away, choosing to wait, choosing to give them space instead of fighting for them. That was the moment my son started to hate me. Not when I left, but when I didn't come after him. When I heard the door close behind Jason that night, I stood there for a long moment in the dim kitchen. I could still feel the weight of his last words hanging between us, like a soft echo that refused to fade. The house felt smaller when he was angry, like the walls leaned in to listen, waiting for something to change. I walked to the sink, turned on the faucet, and let cold water run over my hands. Sometimes, that simple touch was enough to pull me back from the edge. I kept asking myself what I could have done differently. Maybe I could have listened more. Maybe I could have asked more questions when he was younger. Or maybe I should have been home earlier, years before, long before any of this had formed in his heart. But regret works like fog. It rolls in slowly, fills every corner of your mind, and suddenly you can't see anything clearly anymore. You're left standing there, trying to make sense of a landscape you once recognized. I wiped my hands on a towel and looked around the quiet room. His empty plate was on the table, his chair slightly turned, his shadow gone. And suddenly I realized how much space a single person takes up in your life, even when they're not trying, even when they're trying to disappear. I went upstairs and paused outside his bedroom door. It was slightly cracked, but the room was dark. I wasn't going to walk in. He deserved his space. But I found myself standing there anyway, as if my presence alone could soften the hurt we kept passing back and forth. I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me, "I'm trying, son. I really am." Then I walked to my own room, though sleep wasn't anywhere near me. That night, I kept thinking about the promise I made Sophia, to be there for Jason, to show up, even if showing up meant standing outside a closed door. I didn't always know the right words, but I knew how to stay. Maybe that counted for something. The next morning, I heard light footsteps in the hallway. Jason didn't say anything. He just walked to the kitchen, grabbed his backpack, and opened the fridge for a bottle of water. I stayed at the counter with my coffee. I didn't force a conversation. I didn't push. I simply said, "Morning." He paused for a second, like he was debating whether to respond. Then he muttered, "Morning," without looking at me. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't silence either. Sometimes the smallest reply is the biggest victory. When he headed toward the door, I tried again. "You need a ride today?" "No. I'll walk," he said, adjusting the strap of his backpack. I nodded. "All right. Be safe." He didn't answer, but he didn't slam the door either. Progress comes in strange shapes. That morning, it looked like a quiet exit. I waited a few minutes before leaving for work. On the drive there, my mind went over everything that was slowly shifting between us. This wasn't the kind of change you could force. It had to come from patience, like watering a plant that had been left dry too long. You couldn't rush it. You couldn't expect it to bloom overnight. You just kept showing up with water. That day passed slowly. Every task felt heavier, like my hands were working, but my thoughts stayed somewhere else. I kept replaying our kitchen conversation, wondering if I had handled it well or if I had missed another chance to connect. I knew that growth rarely looks like a big breakthrough. Sometimes it's just fewer harsh words, fewer slammed doors, fewer nights sitting alone in the car. When I got home that evening, Jason was on the couch, scrolling through something on his phone. He glanced up for half a second before looking back down. I took that as an invitation instead of a dismissal. "Hey," I said gently as I placed my keys on the table. He gave a small nod. I walked into the kitchen and started preparing dinner. I didn't ask if he wanted any. I didn't call him over. I just cooked. After a while, I heard the soft sound of footsteps behind me. "What are you making?" he asked quietly. I turned around, surprised he initiated conversation. "Chicken and rice. Thought I'd keep it simple." "Oh," he said, nodding once. "Want some?" I asked. He shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." I smiled without making it obvious. "All right, I'll make you a plate." He didn't talk much while we ate, but he didn't leave either. We sat at opposite ends of the table, sharing the same space in silence that didn't feel hostile anymore. It felt neutral, ground we could build on. After dinner, he went upstairs, and I washed the dishes. The house felt calmer. And when a house feels calmer, a heart does too. But every calm moment hides a tension beneath it, like a quiet ocean holding a storm deep in its belly. That storm started to rise again a few days later. It began with a phone call. I was fixing a loose cabinet door when I heard my phone vibrating on the counter. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said. A woman's voice responded. "Is this Jason's father?" My heart tightened. "Yes, this is he. This is Mrs. Thompson. I'm his guidance counselor at school. I'm calling because I think we need to talk." My stomach dropped. "Is he okay?" "He's not in trouble," she said quickly. "But I think he's struggling with some things emotionally. We've noticed changes in his behavior, his grades, and his engagement in class. I think you should come in." A cold wave washed over me. I thanked her and agreed to meet the next morning. When I hung up, I stayed still for a long minute. I didn't like the idea of someone else having insight into my son that I didn't. But I appreciated the call. Maybe it was a chance to understand him better. That night, Jason came home late. Not dangerously late, just later than usual. He looked tired, his shoulders heavier than normal. I didn't confront him. I simply said, "Dinner's in the fridge." He nodded without meeting my eyes. The next morning, I drove to the school. Walking into the guidance office brought back memories I had tried to forget. Memories of sitting in similar chairs when I was younger, avoiding eye contact with counselors who tried to help me when my own father didn't know how. Mrs. Thompson greeted me with a warm smile. She looked like the kind of person who understood kids without them having to say much. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Of course," I replied. She gestured to a chair. "Jason is a good kid, very bright, but he's withdrawn. He hesitates to ask for help. He carries things alone. And when I asked him if something was bothering him at home, he said, 'My dad's trying, but it's complicated.'" A quiet ache formed in my chest. "That sounds about right." "He misses his mother," she added softly. I nodded. "I know. He mentioned that he feels torn between wanting to talk to you and not knowing how." I exhaled slowly. "I feel the same." Mrs. Thompson smiled gently. "You care. That's clear. But Jason needs reassurance. He needs consistency. He needs space to express the things he's held in for years." "I'm trying," I whispered. "I can tell," she said. "And that's why I think he can come around. But it'll take time." Time. The one thing you can't buy more of. The one thing I wished I had used better when he was younger. On the drive back home, I felt everything Mrs. Thompson said repeating in my mind. Jason was struggling quietly, just like me, just like his mother had in her own way. Our family didn't shout. We didn't break things. We just broke silently. That afternoon, when Jason came home, I didn't confront him with what I learned. I simply asked, "How was school?" He shrugged. "Fine. Want to talk about anything?" "No." I nodded. "All right. Just know I'm here." He hesitated for a moment. Then, barely audible, he said, "I know." It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was the closest thing to one we had in a long time. A few days later, another shift happened. One that felt small at first, but ended up meaning more than I realized. It was a Saturday morning. I was sitting on the porch, drinking coffee and reading a worn-out book I had picked up from the library. The sun was warm, and the street was quiet. Jason opened the front door and stepped outside, squinting at the light. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied. He sat on the porch steps, pulling his hood up even though it wasn't cold. After a minute, he asked, "Dad, can I ask you something?" I closed my book slowly. "Anything." He kept his eyes on the street. "Why did you and Mom break up?" The question hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Not because it was unexpected, but because he had never asked it with that much honesty before. "I know you worked a lot," he added. "But was that the only reason?" I took a deep breath. "No, it wasn't the only reason." He waited. "Your mom and I, we loved each other," I began. "But sometimes love isn't enough when two people grow in different directions. I thought I was providing for you both by working more hours. I didn't realize how much I was losing at home." He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "I wasn't angry at her," I added. "We were both tired, both hurting. We just didn't know how to fix it." He swallowed hard. "So it wasn't about me?" I felt my heart crack at the vulnerability in his voice. "No, son," I said immediately. "It was never about you. You were the best part of us. The part we both loved more than anything." His shoulders loosened a little. Not fully, but enough that I could see the tension easing. We didn't say much after that. We just sat there on the porch, looking out at the quiet street. And for the first time in a long while, I felt the space between us softening. But life wasn't done testing us yet. Not even close. Because the moment things began to heal, something happened that none of us expected. Something that would change everything. For him. For me. For both of us. And it began with a single unexpected knock on the door. The knock came early on a Thursday evening. The kind of knock that doesn't rush or demand anything, but carries a weight you can feel from the other side of the door. I was in the kitchen, setting a pan on the stove, when I heard it. A slow, steady knock, 3 taps, a pause, and then one more. It wasn't the knock of a neighbor asking for sugar. It wasn't the knock of a delivery driver. It felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Jason was upstairs, and the house had been unusually calm that day. We had exchanged a few words in the morning. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. Just small, peaceful talk that felt like a new beginning. So when the knock echoed through the hallway, I wiped my hands on a towel and walked toward the door, wondering who could be visiting at this hour. When I reached the door, I hesitated for a second. Sometimes, you can sense when life is about to shift. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for anything. And there she was. Sophia, Jason's mother. She stood on the porch with a small suitcase beside her, her hair pulled back in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her eyes looked tired, deeply tired, but there was something else in them too. Something like fear. Or maybe regret. Or both. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but emotionally, like life had carried her farther than she meant to go. "Hi," she said softly. My chest tightened. "Sophia?" She nodded once. "I didn't want to call before coming. I wasn't sure you'd answer." Her voice was calm, but fragile around the edges. She took a small breath. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside, still processing the shock. "Yeah, come in." She walked inside slowly, like the house held memories she wasn't sure she could face. The moment she crossed the threshold, it felt like the past walked in with her. Every unspoken word, every quiet night, every moment we failed to understand each other. The suitcase rolled behind her softly across the floor. "I'll explain," she said nervously. I need a minute." I nodded and led her to the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers twisting together like she was holding herself steady. "Do you want water? Tea?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I just need to talk to you before I talk to him." That sentence made my heart beat a little faster. "Jason's upstairs," I said quietly. "I can call him down." "No," she whispered quickly. "Not yet. Let me breathe first." I sat across from her and waited. I didn't push. I didn't ask questions. I knew better now. Sometimes the story needs to come out on its own. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "I'm sorry," she said. The words hit me harder than I expected. "I'm sorry for everything. For leaving the way I did. For putting you in this position. For being gone so long. I didn't just break our marriage. I broke him. I know I did." I swallowed slowly. My voice stayed gentle. "Why now, Sophia? Why today?" She looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Because I'm sick." The room went still. "What do you mean?" I asked. She wiped the corner of her eye. "I was diagnosed 3 months ago. A chronic illness. Not terminal," she added quickly, seeing the fear in my face. "But serious. It's going to take time. Treatment. Support. And I have no one where I was living. No friends close enough. No family. I thought I could handle it alone, but I can't." I felt something break inside me. Not anger. Not resentment. Something softer. Sadness for a woman I once loved deeply and still cared about, even after everything. "I'm scared," she admitted. And when people are scared, they want to be around the ones they love. The ones they lost. She took a shaky breath. "I want to see my son. I want to fix what I broke." I leaned back slowly, trying to absorb everything. The suitcase. The tired eyes. The sudden return. The crack in her voice. "Does he know?" I asked. "No," she said. "Not a word." I nodded. "Are you planning to stay here?" I asked gently. She hesitated. "Only if you'll allow it. And only long enough to talk to him. I won't stay permanently if it makes things worse." Her voice trembled. "But I need to tell him the truth. And I want him to hear it from me." I looked toward the stairs. I imagined Jason sitting in his room, headphones on, completely unaware that the woman he resented, the woman he missed, the woman who shaped so much of his pain, was sitting downstairs with her heart in her hands. "Sophia," I said carefully, "I want him to have answers. I want him to have closure. But you need to know, he's been struggling. He's angry, hurt, confused." She nodded slowly. I know this won't be easy, but I have to try." A long silence settled between us before I asked, "Do you need a place to stay tonight?" She looked up with pleading eyes. If it's not too much. No, I said softly. It's not. She exhaled with relief, but I could see the fear still living under her skin. Before I could say more, I heard footsteps upstairs. Light ones. Moving slowly but unmistakably. Jason. He must have heard voices. Or maybe he sensed something was different. He walked halfway down the stairs before he stopped. His eyes went wide. Mom. Sophia stood up immediately, her hands trembling as she took a step toward him. Jason, she whispered, her voice cracking. He didn't move. His entire body froze, like time paused just for him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't crying. He was stunned. Shock does that to a person. What are you doing here? His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't trembling. It was small, devastated, unprepared. Sophia covered her mouth with her hand as tears spilled down her cheeks. I came to see you, she said. I came because I should have never left you this long. He took a slow breath, the kind people take before they break. Why now? I stayed quiet. This wasn't my conversation to lead. Sophia stepped closer. Because I'm sick, sweetheart, and I want to get better, but I need support, and I need you to know the truth. Jason's eyes flicked to the suitcase. His jaw tightened. So you're back because you need something? The pain in his voice felt like a knife. No, she said quickly. Not for that. I'm back because I miss you. Because I'm sorry. Because I should have been here. And because I can't keep pretending I'm okay without you. He didn't move. His eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. I don't know what you want from me, he whispered. You left. Sophia nodded through her tears. I know. And I can't undo it. I can't take back the years I missed. But I can try to be here now. Jason swallowed tightly. I don't trust you. The words broke something in all of us. Sophia stepped back, crumbling a little. I understand, she whispered. And I don't expect you to forgive me. Not today. Maybe not ever. But I needed you to know I'm here. And I'm not running again. Jason looked torn, broken between wanting to run to her and wanting to push her away. I understood that feeling more than anyone. Then he whispered something I wasn't ready for. I don't know if I want you here. Sophia covered her mouth, but the sob escaped anyway. I could feel the tension rising, the past crashing into the present. Jason, I said calmly, stepping forward. You don't have to decide anything right now. Your feelings are valid. All of them. He wiped his cheek roughly, like he was angry at the tear for escaping. I need to think, he whispered. Then he turned and walked back upstairs. Not fast, not loud, but with the heavy steps of someone carrying a lifetime of confusion. Sophia collapsed onto the couch, hands on her face. I shouldn't have come, she cried. I made it worse. I sat beside her, though not too close. No, I said gently. You came because you care. And he needs time. This was a lot for him. She nodded slowly, still crying. Life has a way of bringing back the people we aren't ready to face, right at the moment we are forced to. That night marked the beginning of everything changing. For Jason, for Sophia, for me, and for the fragile hope that somehow, the three of us could face the past without destroying the future. The house felt quieter than usual after Jason went upstairs. Only the hum of the fridge filled the silence. I could hear Sophia's soft, uneven breathing beside me. She was curled slightly, hands clasped together, as though holding on to herself was the only thing keeping her steady. I didn't move closer. I just let her be, letting the weight of the moment settle in both of us. After a few minutes, she spoke again. Her voice was softer now, more fragile. I don't know if I did the right thing, she said. I didn't know how he'd react. I needed him to see me. You did the right thing by being honest, I replied. Even if it hurts now. He needs to know the truth before he can forgive or understand. She shook her head, her hands trembling. I should have been here all those years. I shouldn't have left. Every night I was gone, I thought about him, about you, about what I was taking from him. I nodded slowly. We both made mistakes. The important thing is that you're here now. That's what matters. Her eyes met mine, wide, raw, desperate. Do you think he can forgive me? I hesitated. He's hurting. He's angry. But he's still your son. Forgiveness, it takes time. But it's possible. We stayed in silence for a long while after that. The weight of years, the pain of absence, and the hope of reconciliation all mingled in the air. Outside, the last rays of sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting the room gold. The warmth felt like it could mend some things, even if only a little. I didn't want to speak too much. I knew what mattered now was Jason's choice. what he wanted, how he felt, what he needed. And yet, I could feel the tension in my chest, the anticipation of what would happen next. Finally, Sophia said softly, I have to see him. I have to talk to him, even if he hates me. I know, I replied. You can. But let him come to you in his own time. Her eyes searched mine. Will you be there? I paused, considering. My first instinct was to step back, to let her handle it alone. But I knew Jason needed both of us, even if he wouldn't admit it. Yes, I said. I'll be there. Upstairs, Jason was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. I didn't knock. I didn't interrupt. I just sat down a few feet away, letting him feel my presence without words. He seemed older than his years. Not physically, but emotionally. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they had hardened him in a way that made him distant, unreachable in many moments. And yet, I could see the cracks. The longing to connect, buried deep under walls he'd built over time. Sophia stepped into the doorway slowly. Her hands shook slightly, and I could see the fear in her eyes. She had no idea what kind of response she would get, and neither did I. Sometimes, being human means showing up, even when you're terrified of the outcome. Jason, she whispered, her voice shaking. Can I sit with you? He didn't answer at first. He didn't move. His gaze stayed fixed on the floor. The silence stretched between us like a thin thread ready to snap. I just want to tell you the truth, she continued. And I want you to hear me, even if you hate me for it. Slowly, he lifted his head. The pain in his eyes was raw, unguarded. The kind of pain that can make a man older in an instant. He nodded once, barely, and slid his legs off the bed. He let her sit beside him, just close enough to feel her presence, but far enough to keep his distance. Sophia took a deep breath. I left because I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was giving you a chance to grow without me being a distraction, without a mom who was too scared, too weak to handle her own life. But I was wrong. I hurt you. I hurt you more than I can ever explain. Jason's hands fidgeted with the edge of the blanket. You left. And Dad, he tried. But you weren't here. None of you were. And I hated it. I hated all of it. Sophia's tears fell freely now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I have no excuse that makes it right. I could see the walls in his eyes shaking. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to forgive. But the hurt was too strong, the memories too sharp. And yet, there was a moment, a pause, where I felt something shift. He said slowly. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to. She nodded, accepting it without pleading. That's okay. I just needed you to know the truth. And I'll be here, waiting for when you're ready. He swallowed. His throat worked hard, trying to form words that didn't come. His voice cracked. I just don't want to be left again. You won't be, she promised. I won't leave you again. I swear. For the first time in a long time, he looked at her without anger, without defiance. Just uncertainty. Just the fragile hope that maybe she could be different this time. That maybe they could find a new way forward. I stayed there silently, watching them, knowing that the hardest part was not what had happened, but what came next, rebuilding trust, piece by piece, word by word, day by day. Later that evening, after Jason went back to his room, Sophia and I sat quietly in the living room. The suitcase remained at her feet. Neither of us spoke much. We didn't need to. The tension of the day had been too heavy. The quiet was welcome. I don't know how to fix everything, she said finally. But I needed him to see me. That's all I could do today. I nodded. That's enough for today. He'll need time. And you'll need time. But this was a start. She smiled faintly, the first small smile I'd seen from her in years. It feels like the first time I'm really home. I nodded again. Welcome back. The house was quiet. The night outside stretched endlessly, peaceful in a way that suggested maybe tomorrow would be better. Maybe the cracks we'd lived with for years could slowly be repaired. Maybe the love that had been missing could find its way back. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. The next morning, the house felt different. Not loud, not chaotic, but alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The sunlight streamed through the blinds in long, warm streaks, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like it was highlighting the absence of someone I loved. It felt like it was lighting the possibility of something new. Jason stayed upstairs longer than usual. I didn't push him. I made my coffee slowly, savoring the warmth, the aroma, the quiet. Sophia moved about the kitchen, soft movements, gentle sounds. It was domestic. It was ordinary. And ordinary sometimes feels more like healing than anything dramatic ever could. After a while, I heard him come down the stairs. Quiet, careful, but deliberate. He stopped at the top of the stairs, hesitating. Then he stepped into the kitchen, and for a moment, the room felt smaller. He looked at both of us, me and his mother, and for the first time, I saw something shift in his posture. Not fully softened, not fully trusting, but curious, hesitant hope. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied. Sophia offered a small smile. "Morning, Jason." He nodded, eyes on the counter, hands fiddling with the strap of his backpack. Can we talk later?" "Of course," I said gently. "Whenever you're ready." And that was all for now. Sometimes, progress is measured in minutes, not hours. In a quiet acknowledgement that the conversation will come. That trust can be rebuilt. Slowly, carefully. That afternoon, I decided to take a small risk. A gentle one. I asked him if he wanted to go for a walk. Just the three of us. No expectations, no heavy conversations. Just movement. Fresh air. Normalcy. He didn't answer immediately. Just stood there, arms crossed, as though debating. Then he shrugged. "Sure. I guess." We stepped outside together. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of rain from the night before. The sidewalks were damp, but the world felt alive. He walked a few steps ahead, but not far. Sophia and I followed, giving him space, letting him lead. The first few minutes were quiet. Tense, almost, but not hostile. Just cautious. Then Sophia broke it gently. "Remember the park near our old apartment? We used to go there every Sunday?" He glanced back at her, expression neutral, but his eyes softened slightly. "Yeah, I remember." She smiled, small, hopeful. "I thought maybe we could go there today." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Not excited, not eager. But he agreed. We walked together. No yelling. No pushing. Just steps, side by side. The quietness wasn't empty. It was the beginning of something we had all missed, a rhythm we used to have, before life pulled us apart. Each footstep became a small bridge between us. Each shared glance became a tiny thread reconnecting years of distance. At the park, he wandered slowly, taking in familiar sights. The swings, the slide, the old tree where we used to tie our kite string. I watched him. Sophia watched him. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Watching was enough. Sometimes, being present is the first step toward healing. He stopped near the tree and picked up a fallen leaf, turning it over in his hands. Sophia and I stayed back, letting him be. Then, quietly, he spoke. I don't know if I can trust things to stay normal," he admitted. "I don't know if this is just another goodbye waiting to happen." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "Not this time. I promise." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Neither of us will leave you again. We'll be here. Every step." He nodded, swallowing hard. A small nod, but it carried weight. The weight of a boy learning that hope could exist again. The weight of a son beginning to believe that he could be loved without losing it. Over the next few weeks, small changes started happening. Jason would sit with us at breakfast. Sophia would help him with his homework. I would take him to soccer practice, and he didn't complain the way he used to. Not every moment was perfect. There were still silences, still doubts, still nights where he retreated upstairs, shoulders hunched, guarded. But there were also smiles, laughter, shared jokes that felt genuine. Moments that made the previous years of absence feel less permanent. One evening, I found him in the living room, drawing quietly. I didn't interrupt. I just sat across the room, watching. After a while, he looked up. "Dad, can you help me with this?" he asked. I smiled and moved closer. Of course. As we worked together, his hand brushed mine briefly. Small, accidental, fleeting. But it was enough. Enough to remind me that connection wasn't gone. Enough to remind me that love can find its way back, even after being lost for so long. Sophia and I also began speaking more openly. About the past. About mistakes. About what we each wanted for the future. Not always easy. Not always comfortable. But necessary. I realized that healing isn't just for the child. It's for everyone who has been broken by distance and absence. It's for the parents who carry guilt, the mother who left to survive, the father who stayed too busy to notice. Healing is a slow, patient process, a conversation that never truly ends. And Jason noticed. I could see it in him. The subtle shift in his posture. The way he laughed a little easier. The way he asked questions instead of shutting down. The way he trusted us, even if just a little, each day. Then came a rainy Saturday. One of those slow, soft rainfalls that tap on the windows and make the world feel smaller, warmer, quieter. We all sat inside together. Sophia making tea. Jason reading a book. Me on the couch with a notebook, scribbling down thoughts I didn't intend to share. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The silence was comforting, a small miracle after so many years of absence. Jason looked up at the rain, then at his mother. I missed this, he said quietly. Her eyes welled with tears. I missed it too, sweetheart. I felt a lump in my throat. Not regret, not sadness, but relief. Relief that something we thought lost forever was slowly coming back. Relief that even after everything, life had given us another chance. That night, before bed, Jason came into my room. He didn't say much, just sat on the edge of the bed. Dad, he whispered. Yes, son. I'm glad you stayed, he said. Even when I hated you. I swallowed hard. I'm glad too. He smiled faintly, tired but genuine. Maybe things can be different now. I nodded. Yes, they can. And for the first time in years, I believed it. The days that followed felt different. Not perfect, not magically fixed, but different in a way that mattered. Jason began to open up more. Not everything at once, not everything neatly tied up, but in small, honest moments that made my chest ache with relief and gratitude. One evening, he came down from his room carrying a sketchbook. He walked slowly toward the couch, a quiet hesitation in every step. Dad, Mom, I drew something, he said softly, placing the book on the coffee table. Sophia and I leaned in together, careful not to crowd him. He flipped the pages slowly, revealing drawings of our old house, our backyard, the tree we used to climb, and even the park where we had walked together not long ago. Each image was simple, but there was emotion in every stroke, the longing, the hope, and even the hurt. I didn't know how to say it, he murmured, but I wanted to keep some things from the past, things that were ours, even if they were broken. Sophia reached over and brushed his hair back gently. They're beautiful, Jason. Thank you for sharing them with us. I nodded, swallowing hard. They really are. You've been holding a lot inside, and I'm proud of you for letting it out. He looked at both of us for a moment. Quiet, vulnerable. Then he smiled faintly, a small, tentative smile that made my heart feel lighter than it had in years. That weekend, we tried something new. A small family outing, nothing extravagant. Just a walk in the park, some sandwiches from the deli, and coffee for Sophia and me. Jason carried his sketchbook with him, occasionally stopping to add a drawing of a leaf or a flower. For the first time, I noticed how much he had grown, not physically, but emotionally. The walls he had built were still there, yes, but there were cracks now, and through those cracks, light was filtering in. And the best part was that he was beginning to trust us again. Sophia walked beside him, gently holding his hand. I stayed a few steps behind, letting them have their space. But when I looked at him, he turned and gave me a small nod. Not a word, not a demand, just a quiet acknowledgement that I was still there. Still his father. Still someone he could rely on. It was a fragile peace, but peace nonetheless. Later that afternoon, back at home, Jason asked if I could help him with a project for school. He wanted to build a small model of our neighborhood out of cardboard and paper. As we worked together, I noticed the little things, the way he listened when I explained something, the way he laughed when I made a mistake, the way he allowed me to guide him without feeling like I was taking over. This is fun, he said quietly, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I laughed softly. Since when is schoolwork fun? Since you're doing it with me, he replied. It was such a simple thing, but it meant everything. Evenings became calmer. We shared dinners without silence hanging heavily over us. We talked about small things, the weather, books we were reading, silly stories from when he was little. Every conversation was a step forward. Every smile, every laugh, every small act of trust was a thread weaving our broken family back together. Sophia and I also started talking more openly about the past, our regrets, our mistakes, our hopes for the future. It wasn't easy. There were tears. There were moments when old wounds bled through. But we were learning to forgive ourselves and each other. And in that, we were showing Jason that healing was possible. One rainy evening, Jason came to me with a question I hadn't expected. Dad, why didn't you fight for me when Mom left? He asked. I took a deep breath, knowing this was a question I needed to answer honestly. I thought I was doing the right thing by respecting her wishes. I thought she needed space, and I wanted to become a better father before trying to bring you back. But I see now. I should have been there more. I should have tried harder to be present for you every day. He nodded slowly. I get it kind of, but it still hurt. I know it did, I said softly. And I'm sorry. I can't change the past, but I can be here now. And I promise I will never stop trying. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. Okay, that's enough for now. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, our family began to feel whole again. Not perfect, not like nothing had happened, but whole in the ways that mattered most. In trust, in presence, in love. Jason still had moments of anger, moments of doubt, moments when he would retreat upstairs and close the door. But those moments became shorter, less frequent. He began to share more of his thoughts, more of his world, more of himself. Sophia and I learned to support each other without clashing, to communicate without judgment, and to let Jason guide us in understanding his feelings. And most importantly, we all learned that time doesn't erase pain, but it does give the chance to heal if you show up, if you listen, if you care. One evening, as I sat alone on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching Jason and Sophia laugh inside over a board game, I felt a sense of quiet gratitude. The house was alive again. The laughter, the presence, the small moments of connection. They were the real victories, not trophies or accomplishments or money. I realized that being a parent isn't about never making mistakes. It's about showing up, over and over, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when the past seems too heavy to overcome. And being a family isn't about perfection. It's about presence, forgiveness, and love. That night, I went inside and watched Jason fall asleep. I saw Sophia sitting quietly in the chair beside him, holding his hand. I smiled softly. We were still healing. We always would be. But we were together. And that was enough. Because sometimes, love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, quiet acts, showing up, listening, forgiving, and being there when it matters most. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of our lives slowly began to settle. Jason was more open, Sophia more relaxed, and I finally felt like I was breathing again. Not because everything was perfect, far from it, but because the tension that had lived in the house for years had softened. We were learning to live with each other again, learning to trust, learning to love. One afternoon, I found Jason sitting at the kitchen table, sketchbook open, pencils scattered around him. He looked up when I entered. "Hey, Dad," he said. "Hey, buddy. How's the drawing coming?" He shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "Good, I think. Want to see?" I nodded and sat down across from him. He flipped the pages, showing me a series of drawings that traced the timeline of his life, little snapshots of the past, the present, and the hope he was beginning to feel for the future. "These are amazing, Jason," I said softly. "You captured everything so well." He glanced at me quickly. "Thanks. I wanted you to see. I wanted Mom to see." Sophia entered the room quietly, her eyes glistening. She knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I see you, Jason. I always see you." He looked at both of us, then back at the drawings, and I could see a weight lift from his shoulders. Not all at once, not completely, but enough to know that we were moving forward together. The following days brought small victories. Jason laughed freely again, though sometimes hesitantly. He shared stories from school. He asked for help with projects. He even invited friends over, a gesture that would have been impossible just months ago. Sophia and I learned to navigate our own fragile partnership. We talked honestly about boundaries, about past mistakes, and about the kind of family we wanted to be. It wasn't easy. Some nights ended in tears. Some mornings in awkward silence. But the effort was worth it, because Jason felt it too. He knew we were trying, and that was enough to soften his anger, if only just a little. One evening, I found myself sitting on the porch alone, coffee in hand, watching the rain fall in gentle sheets. The world was quiet, peaceful. I thought about everything that had happened, the years of absence, the anger, the mistrust, the quiet resentment, and I realized something profound. We cannot change the past. We cannot erase mistakes. But we can choose how we move forward. We can choose to show up, to be present, to forgive ourselves and each other. And when we do, the impossible becomes possible. Jason came outside quietly, sitting on the steps beside me. He didn't speak at first. We just listened to the rain. Then, softly, he said, "Dad, thanks for not giving up on me." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll never give up on you, Jason. Never." He nodded, leaning back against the step. I know. And I think I'm ready to try again. With Mom. And I with you." I reached over and ruffled his hair gently. That's all I could ever ask for. Sophia stepped onto the porch quietly, standing behind him, hands resting lightly on his shoulders. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The following weeks were filled with small milestones. Family dinners became longer, filled with laughter and conversation. Weekend walks turned into small adventures. Evenings of reading and quiet storytelling became moments of bonding. I watched Jason grow, not just in age, but in understanding, empathy, and patience. I watched Sophia grow, learning to balance forgiveness with self-respect. And I watched myself grow, learning that love is not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day, even when it's hard. One rainy Sunday afternoon, I found myself reflecting quietly in my journal. I wrote, "Love isn't perfect. Family isn't perfect. But presence, patience, and honesty can heal what we once thought lost. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it makes it lighter to carry. And sometimes, showing up, again and again, is the bravest thing a person can do." Jason wandered into the room, holding his sketchbook. He looked at me with that quiet, tentative trust he was slowly reclaiming. "Dad, I drew something for us," he said. I smiled, taking the sketchbook from him. Inside were drawings of our home, our family, and the small moments that had stitched us back together. Laughter, shared meals, walks in the park, quiet evenings by the window. "These are perfect," I whispered, "just like this moment." He smiled softly, shy but genuine. "I'm glad we're trying again. And we will keep trying," I said. "Every day, together." Sophia joined us, her hands resting on both our shoulders. "We're a team now," she said softly. "Yes," I agreed. "A team." That night, as Jason slept in his room, I stood by the window and watched the rain fall. I thought about the journey we had been on, the pain, the absence, the mistakes, and I realized that even in the hardest moments, love has a way of coming back. Slowly, carefully, patiently. We had been broken, yes, but we were healing. Not perfectly, not magically, but with presence, care, and quiet understanding. And in that, I found a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Because sometimes, life gives you a second chance, not to erase the past, but to build a future stronger than the one you lost. And that's exactly what we were doing. Together. The weeks turned into months, and the change in our home was subtle but undeniable. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. There were no fireworks, no grand declarations. Just small things. Jason laughing a little more freely, Sophia asking him questions and listening, me learning to pause before speaking, learning to hear him fully without judgment. Life had a quiet rhythm now, one built on patience, trust, and the effort to be present. I realized that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about showing up, day after day, and allowing love to seep into the spaces that were once broken. One afternoon, Jason came to me, sketchbook in hand, a quiet look of determination in his eyes. "Dad, I want to show you something," he said softly. I nodded and followed him to the living room. He flipped through the pages, revealing drawings that captured moments from our life. The park, the old tree, our home, quiet evenings with tea and conversation. But then there were newer drawings of us together, smiling, walking, sharing meals. Moments that hadn't happened long ago, but were happening now. "These are incredible," I whispered. "You're telling our story." He nodded slowly. "I wanted to remember that we're here, that we're trying, that we're a family again." Sophia appeared in the doorway, her eyes soft, wet with tears she didn't bother to hide. "I see it too, Jason," she said. "I see all of us, together." And for the first time, the word together felt real. That night, I sat alone on the porch, the soft hum of rain against the roof. I reflected on everything, the years of absence, the mistakes, the pain, the quiet rage, the moments we almost gave up. And I realized something profound. Forgiveness is not about erasing what happened. It's about freeing ourselves to love again. I thought about Jason, about Sophia, about myself. And I understood that life gives second chances not to undo what's gone wrong, but to rebuild what truly matters. Slowly, carefully, with attention to the smallest details, a shared cup of tea, a smile after a tense silence, a quiet conversation late at night. Healing, I realized, is not a single moment. It's 1,000 small moments strung together, and each one counts. A few weeks later, we sat together in the living room, the sunlight pouring through the windows. Jason was drawing, Sophia reading, and I was watching, heart full. "Dad," Jason said softly, breaking the quiet. "Yes, son. I'm glad you stayed. Even when I hated you." I swallowed hard, keeping my voice calm. "I'm glad too. And I'll always stay." He smiled faintly, tired but genuine. "I think maybe things can be different now." "Yes," I said. "They can. And they will be, because we're together." Sophia leaned over, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder. "We're a family again," she whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "A family." That night, I sat at my desk, pen in hand, and wrote down the lessons life had forced me to learn. Love is patient. Love is presence. Love is showing up, again and again, even when it hurts. Mistakes cannot be erased, but they can teach us. Pain cannot be undone, but it can guide us. Forgiveness does not make the past disappear, but it makes the future lighter to carry. And sometimes, the greatest strength a person can show is simply to stay, to be there, to care, quietly, consistently, without expectation. I looked out the window at the soft glow of the streetlights. Jason was asleep upstairs. Sophia was in the living room, reading quietly. And I, for the first time in many years, felt at peace. We had been broken. We had been lost. But through effort, patience, and love, we were healing. Together. And that, I realized, was enough. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you a perfect story. It gives you a story of imperfection, struggle, mistakes, and pain. But if you show up, if you try, if you love, if you forgive, then the story can still be beautiful. And ours was.